What does it take to get clear on who you are? Beyond the roles, titles, and expectations. I'm Chisom, your host on Overnight Wisdom. There comes a moment in every leader's life when the title no longer fits the truth of who they are, when the spotlight feels too dim or too bright, or just no longer yours to stand in. But living isn't weakness, it's clarity. In this episode, we talk about identity beyond position, about the courage it takes to lead without pretending, and the radical act of saying, "This is no longer for me." Hanna Birna, Kristjánsdóttir, doesn't perform leadership. She lives it. And then, when the time came, she let it go with grace. What does it mean to exit well? To choose integrity over optics, to lead from the inside out? This conversation is a mirror, especially for those of us who have outgrown our roles, our rooms, our rhythms. If you ever asked, who am I without the title? Or what kind of leader do I want to be? This episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Hanna. Really great to have you on Overnight Wisdom. I'm so excited for this conversation.
I am as well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I like to jump right into the meat of things. So I just want to ask you, who are you? Let's look at your journey. You've been a mayor, you've been a minister, you've been the chair of the Women Political Leaders, and you are now the head of Reykjavík Global Forum. That's quite a path. How did you end up here? Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, this might be the hardest question. I mean, I'm just sort of a middle-aged woman in Reykjavík, Iceland. My journey has been fairly long. I mean, I was first involved in politics and then sort of did more of an international work. As you said, I've both been in local government and national government. I didn't sort of intend to do this really. I mean, I was just a young girl in Reykjavík, Iceland, and I went my way through university. I never had, for example, I had never given a speech when I was like 25 or something like that. I went abroad and studied international and European politics with the aim of sort of going into the academia or journalism. That was always my goal. So there was never an intention to go into any kind of public life, if you like. I was fairly shy and sort of wanted to keep to myself. One would have described me as nerdy. So if you were to tell my parents when I was young that she will go into politics and sort of take on these roles, they would have said, no way. She will be sort of closed in a library for the rest of her life writing something. So it didn't come naturally, if you like. But when I tried out for it, I mean, I was asked to do things in politics and I did. And then I just felt comfortable about it. I mean, I felt comfortable about it. It really sort of drove my energy and my passion for things. I didn't realize that I had them in such a large portion, if you like, before. But when I entered it, I sort of immediately a little bit felt like home. So, yeah, I think it worked out in that was sort of the route, but it was never really, I didn't sit down when I was 20 and say, I really want to go into this. I want to sort of design my path. I never designed the path. It more came to me than anything else. But that might be also because I'm almost 60 today. And when I was really young, even women and girls in Iceland, at least girls, did not see their path. I mean, I didn't grow up with loads of role models when it came to women in politics or women being in leadership position. So maybe it was just the fact that I wasn't used to it. So I didn't imagine it. I mean, one would see, if you don't see it, you can't be it. So I rarely saw it. But as soon as I got the taste of it, I really liked it.
That's really fascinating, especially because, I mean, Iceland is the pinnacle of, women leaders in politics and office. So it's really interesting to also reflect on, in your lifetime, there was a time when women couldn't see a path in leadership for themselves. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, this is what is the fact around gender equality. It's more than anything, it's a decision. It is a decision that the nation of Iceland took like 40 years ago or something. But when I was younger, the decision hadn't been made. I mean, I grew up and I really loved politics. I watched TV shows with politics. I listened to politicians. But I recall the name of the women I saw all because they were so few. I mean, I think when I was born, there were 1 or 2 women in parliament. When my mother was born, and she's 80, there was none to 1. And when my daughters were born, almost half of the parliamentarians were women. So this has changed in my lifetime. So when I was young, it wasn't natural for women to go into that. Today, it's a totally different story, but I didn't grow up with it. But I mean, of course, I knew few of them, and I recall when I was I think I was 14 years old when our first democratically elected female president of Iceland, and then the first female president in the world, democratically elected president, was voted for. And that was a huge change for all of us. And maybe then something changed inside of all of us, but we didn't grow up. Not my generation, the generation of my daughters, obviously, but not my generation.
What is coming up for me is what becomes possible in a lifetime, right? Because right now, I mean, with everything going on in the world, I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're screwed, But then to think that change can happen, yes, in a long time, but also in a short time. Because sometimes I think in my generation, maybe things don't change. Maybe they change in my daughter's generation. What I'm receiving from you now is that maybe change is possible even in my lifetime, so to say. So it's quite interesting to see that. And then I was thinking about, since politics is something you fell into, did you have to attach it to a why to be able to, continue to lean into it? So for example, you might attach teaching or sustainability to the future of our children, for example. So I'm just curious, was there anything you attached it to?
Yes, definitely. And I think that was the case. I mean, when I went into politics, there was a definitely reason of why. There was this group of young women in the University of Iceland and sort of newcomers into the employment market, if you like, sort of young graduate women that came together to strive and work for gender equality. That's the reason why I went in. Many of us later went into politics, and this was associated with a party in Iceland that was then by far the largest party in Iceland, and so many of our generation joined that sort of ideology in some shape or form. We felt that gender equality wasn't high enough on the agenda of politics in general, so we came together and made sure that it was on the political agenda. So that's the reason why I went to politics. I think I would never have gone into politics if it wasn't about fighting for the rights of women and girls. If it would have been for something else, I don't think I would have found the fire within me to do it. But that was the reason why I went in. And I think that goes for many other women of my generation.
I love that. So you've spent a significant part of your life as a leader in different contexts. And as you move through all the different roles, how has it shaped or altered your view on leadership?
Yeah, greatly. When I started, and I said this earlier, for example, when I was working for the first time in politics, I found out the difference between, and this is me again coming to gender equality and diversity. When I entered politics, we were very few female by the table, and I felt again and again that their drive, that is man, was different from my drive. They had maybe decided long ago to enter politics, and they had seen themselves or visioned themselves as leader for a long time. I had not. So I more came into it without having a path of exactly how to do it. The only path I had was the path of male-dominated leadership for a long, long time. So I think that what I have learned is that I wish I would have done that earlier, because I think when I started, I went a little bit, I would say that I was a good leader, but I still didn't do it exactly as I would have wanted to do it. I was trying to make sure that I fitted the usual mold of leader. I was trying to make sure that I wasn't too sort of different from all of the other ones. So I would say I did give a little bit of a discount of how I wanted to do it, because everybody told me how it should be done. And I wish I would have learned that a little bit earlier, but it takes time. It takes courage. It takes sort of you being really confident in your leadership to do that. So it comes with age, it comes with experience. But I think, for example, the younger generation of female leaders in Iceland are way more confident in doing it their way than when I was starting in I was like 30 or something like that.
But I also think that that is only possible because of leaders like you, right? It's like when something is, you said it earlier, and I think it rings to the you can't be what you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you were coming up, there were very few people. I think now anyone in Iceland, I mean, I don't live in Iceland, but every time I'm there, I'm just marveled at the amount of women badasses, right? Just everywhere. So if you're growing up with that, then of course the possibilities are endless and you have that permission to be yourself, to show up and to do it your own way. So I think, of course, it is to our benefit. And I think, the current generation that are coming up after you, to their benefits that leaders like you have gone before.
Yeah.
You did say a bit about like shape-shifting. I do want to come back to that. But before that, I just want to talk a little bit about Reykjavík Global Forum, which you created. Each year you gather about 500 global women leaders in a space for a few days. Now, on one hand, this happens in Iceland, like gender equality central, relatively. And I guess my question for you is, what gap were you trying to fill? Like, why did you think that was needed?
Interesting, because you said earlier that we need to look at history and see that actually dreams, for example, around gender equality can become true even in a lifetime when we take a decision on that. When I entered politics, I never found the magic to be, I'm in a given party, I'm going to stick to that all the time. I'm going to see all the ones that are not in my party as opponents. The beauty of politics for me was to sit down and find a solution and find some kind of common ground, have a conversation and resolve issues. This is what I found to be the magic of politics. And I think partly, and I know where man came from. I know the environment that shaped politics. It was more around sort of almost being like you entered a war. You needed to win the war. But I'm of the opinion that democracy was never thought of as something like that, but more us trying to solve things than entering some kind of war. So, and when I entered politics young, I always envisioned that I would really love to do something that gathered women together, not just from different political parties, but from different sectors, like from politics, from academia, from education, from business, from media, from whatever. Because I was of the firm belief that if they would gather together and see what they could do together, learn from each other and sort of get a little bit energized, because we as women leaders often feel a little bit isolated. So I had this dream that this would be something that I would at some point do. So when I left politics later, I saw the opportunity to do it on an international scale. And with my connection then globally in politics and sort of working in the global scene, I just decided that it was time to try it, and it worked. And our community is now, we have 500 in Iceland, Reykjavík yearly, but our community is over 12,500 women leaders. And we have all kinds of events and gatherings and conversations, but it's all about this sort of thing that I've always wanted, that women try and come together and sort of make sure that they feel the power from other women doing different things, not necessarily exactly the same, but doing different things in a different setting, different societies. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
I love that. The roster of the women you gather each year, it's just mind-blowing. It's like the dream place to be. And because I remember looking through, the people who came last year, and then previous years, and I thought, oh my God, I would die just being in a room with them, So I think you've done phenomenally in that sense. And I'm also thinking, just hearing you talk about what it means to lead, regardless of the political party that you're in, it's not about fighting, but how can we find common ground? I think in 2026, a lot of leaders could benefit, right? From like, how do we move forward together? So of course, I think for me, I often say, and I think I'm objectively biased, but I feel like the world would be a better place if we had more women leaders, right? Unfortunately, we don't.
I think that it's not just our belief. I think it's facts. For example, Iceland is the country number 1 when it comes to gender equality. Iceland is also the country number 1 when it comes to peace. So all research would tell you this goes hand in hand. So I think that and I don't think it's just about genders. I think it's also about other factors, that the more diverse the group is that decides on things, the better it sits with the people of the world, if you like. So, and I think, there are loads of research and loads of facts showing that when you have more women around the table, these solutions are better thought, they are better suited for the population, and they bring something extra. Obviously it does, because we're trying to make sure that the people feel good, and the people are half women. So we need to try and echo that by the table of power. And I think also, because you mentioned, and that is of course what we are so proud of, we get loads of total powerhouses of women that come to Iceland, and one could say, why do they want to spend their precious time 3 days in Iceland with 500 women, and they do it year after year, some of them? That's because they need this space. They need the space to feel like they belong. They need the space where they hear stories and get good advices. And they need to feel that this is their place just as well as theirs. So there is a need for these women to sort of recharge among someone where they feel, and they say when they come to Iceland, it feels like home. I feel energized. I go home and I can say I can do whatever I want. If I get into sort of mixed feeling about it, I will just contact somebody from the community and get somebody to support me on it, get advices. So, and also learn, it's not just uniting around stories of success, because all of these women are successful. Mm-hmm. It's also around uniting around stories of mistakes, because women tend to leave and give up, and they are way harsher punished if they make mistakes. So it's also around, every success story has loads of mistakes and loads of things that you would have wanted to do differently. And this is also important, I think, for women leaders to hear and know.
Absolutely. I think it's such a valuable network that you've created. And then what you were saying about mistakes, because this is also one of the things that when I talk to leaders like you on my podcast, I'm also trying to get out, what did you learn? What are some of the challenges? What would you have done differently if you could go back? And I wanted to come back to what you were talking about around when you first started politics, you weren't quite sure if you could be yourself or if you had to model an image of who a politician or a leader is. So I have 2 questions for you. The first being, at the time you were coming into these roles in Iceland, what was the template for a leader in politics? Did you have clarity on who you were, even though you felt that you couldn't be that person authentically?
Yeah, there was this model around how politicians should be. You should be firm. You should never admit that you're not certain or sure. You should stay firm, although you knew that something might not be right. You should never show that you sort of were vulnerable around something, or you felt unsure or insecure. You should never show that. You should not be seen as somebody that was lenient towards other views, especially of different political parties. It was okay within your own party, but not when it came to other parties. And you should have, most of the politicians then had what you mentioned in the beginning, like a firm plan of where they wanted to go, not necessarily with an idea, but rather with themselves. So you should be able to say, well, I think I'll start here and then I might go there and then I'm thinking about this. So you should have that plan. But you asked, did I know? Being really frank, no, I didn't know. I really found out what kind of leader I was, how I wanted to sort of be around leadership, and what kind of persona I would like to not just be, but also be perceived. That I learned along the way more than anything. Of course, you have certain cores within yourself. You have, fairly passionate. I tend to be too passionate. I knew that before I entered. I tend to try a lot to try and convince people of what I feel would be the best thing. I tend to maybe go too far. I have my work ethics are sort of, in retrospect, way too harsh on myself. I work way too much, which is something that I would not advise leaders to do, because time to reflect and time to sort of relax and let go a little bit are as much of a value as the time you spend in front of your computer. So I wasn't sure, but I learned fairly quickly, but it happened along the way.
Thanks for sharing that. I love that. I think for people who are also listening to this, I think you raise such an important point around you cannot just work and work and work yourself into oblivion, right? So having that time to reflect, to re-gauge, to reassess things is so important. I guess my question for you here is, do you have a memory of a time when you realized that you were performing leadership? I know you said it happened along the way, but is there a recollection of a day where you were like, oh no, this is not me?
Do you mean that I was doing something that I didn't want to do or felt?
Or like even just like you were performing a version that you realize is no longer you. So when you talk about this imprint of what a politician should look like and trying to wiggle your way and find yourself in all of that. So you said you found yourself along the way. So I'm just wondering, was there a pivotal moment that you recall, or did it just kind of happen organically?
I think there are there are moments when I realized that I had the ability to be a leader. There are moments when I, for example, were fairly young and when I was given speeches about something that I really felt passionate about. You can see if you can move a crowd. You can see if you're in front of a large crowd, you learn if you are at all affecting them or if they aren't sort of invested in what you're saying. I learned fairly quickly that because this was what I was most worried about. If somebody would have said to me when I was 25 or something, you will become a leader in some shape or form, what is the most worrying part? I would have said, talking in public. Number 1, 2, and 3. I mean, I would have said, I don't want to do it. I cannot do it. I don't have the power to do it. And I'm not good in that. So that was sort of a really big step for me, because you have to do that as a leader. You have to convince a large room of people. You have to be confident and you have to feel that it's sort of feel good when you're doing it. Otherwise, it is difficult. So I have moments where I'm standing in a podium with a large group of people, and I see that I can move people. I see that people are willing to listen, and they might even want to join my journey. So I remember moments like that. I also remember moments when I had more of an individual power, if you like. There is one thing to be a part of a group of leaders. For example, when I was in local government, I was one of 8. So the responsibility sits with a group, yes, but it doesn't necessarily sit with you as an individual. It's a group decision. When I felt most matured in my leadership and felt that I was totally where I should be was when I became the mayor of Reykjavík. I had then sort of learned, I worked within a political party as the Assistant Secretary General for 11 years. I knew the politics really, really well. I knew the sort of work of the local government or the city of Reykjavík very well. I felt just as if I have landed totally where I should be. And this is where the crisis hit Iceland in 2008. So there was a need for consensus in order for us just to survive. And this is where I felt my sort of way of doing things can actually be really, really useful. And this is where I threw out every traditional way of doing politics. The minority was as well informed and took part in our decision as the majority. And this is where I really felt that my leadership style and the way I wanted to do things were of value. But there are instances, Tisan, in my leadership journey where I've felt, of course, I'm not doing things how I want to do them. And I'm justifying ways that even don't sit well with me. And of course, there are moments in politics you have to follow the main route of your party, and it's not always what you love or like. So there are moments, my sort of worst moments, I think, is when I lost sight of the big picture. When I got too involved or occupied by something that was happening, events or something that took place, and it took me away from why am I actually here and what is expected of me. So I think these were my sort of moments of doubts, and they are many in politics. Many, many.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So much is happening in my head now based on what you said. But I want to come back briefly to confidence, right? You said one of your biggest concern before you actually started doing it is speaking in public.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are listening to this probably feel that way. Like, oh, I can't do public speaking. I can't lead. And this is a bottleneck.
Yeah.
At the same time, you also said that because you got what I understand as positive feedback from the audience, you saw that you could move them. You saw that your passion was something viable that continued to encourage you to continue to do it. Now, what I want to maybe lock in on what happens between the I don't think I can do this to I'm getting on stage. That in between, how did you do it? How did you get on stage?
Yes, I think, and I'm trying to recall a poll I once saw around the fear that people had for public speaking. And that's real. I mean, people have real fear for public speaking. What I did is that I approached it strategically. I sort of contacted a person that I know that is really, really good with public speaking, and she trained me. I mean, I went into, because I said this is a hurdle. I'm not sort of knowing exactly how I want to do it. I mean, I was good. I mean, throughout my time working in politics, before I entered them myself, I wrote loads of speeches in politics. So I was good in writing them. I was good in making a message, knowing where the core needed to be and things like that. But I felt really, really afraid about these large podium that usually are designed for man, and sort of the awe of it all and the impact of it all. So I practiced. I mean, I just did that. I practiced in front of people that cared for me and I felt at ease with and felt secure with. And I developed my own style and sort of I went with it. I think I didn't do my speeches the way necessarily I was expected to do. I went a little bit more the way I wanted to do it. I really love telling stories when I give speeches. So I went a little bit more personal than that maybe people were used to seeing. So I did it my way, but I trained for it. And I mean, I took on the challenge of doing it for a smaller group. And then I felt I loved it when I had trained myself, because there is the great feeling. I think it's like an athlete when you've done the route. Do you know what I mean? In politics, when you give a speech that you know you're passionate about, you know you're doing the right thing, it feels really, really good. Yeah. So it ended up being something that I didn't worry about, but I really thrived from it. It gave me energy to do that. But I admitted that I'm sort of afraid of it. So I tackled it.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because I think oftentimes a lot of people get stuck in the, oh my gosh, I can't do it. Oh my gosh, I don't want to climb that mountain. Oh my gosh, I can't go to the gym, whatever it is, right? And I think what you're saying, which I think a lot of people should also get from this, is you took action, like small, meaningful action that compounded over time. You know, it could have been that, of course, like you ask someone to help you. So that's 1% increase or getting better at it. And then now here you are talking in front of massive people, like at your conferences globally in your country. So I guess one of the things I'm taking from this, and I hope also the audience is taking from this, is nothing happens until something moves. You know, if you want to do something, you actually have to take action.
Yeah. And it's also I did get that so often in politics, that people think that politicians and people that are public speakers in any shape or form, that it's just part of their DNA. It is not. I mean, some are better at it than others. Some feel faster at ease with it. But I mean, I've done this for 30 years, but I still prepare. I'm still a little bit worried before I enter. This is still a challenge, but you need to also realize that nobody is born with it. I mean, because I think often women say, I mean, this is something that they just have. No. It's something, if you're going to be good at it, you need to train for it.
Yes, absolutely. No, what was kind of for me as well was a lot of people do not believe it when I tell them, but I'm painfully shy. Like, I'm so shy. But I've spoken on stages, done debates my entire life from school, you know? And even to this day, where I'm going in front of like thousands of stages and I do really well, I'm terrified before I open my mouth. It's an ongoing process. Like, you just have to face the fear and do it.
Yeah, exactly. One is always, at least I'm always terrified before I enter. But the difference now is that when I'm on it and when I've started, I feel fine.
Like everything disappears.
Yeah,
Like, it's just the adrenaline comes.
Yeah,
I love that. I want to talk about a pivotal identity moment for you. In 2014, you resigned as the Minister of Interior. What did that moment teach you about your own leadership identity?
It taught me a lot. It was definitely one of the most influential and sad and challenging and worst moment of my political participation. I never thought that I would resign, never thought the situation would come up. I never had even sort of thought about it, but it came slowly. It sort of happened. It was a political turbulence that took quite a long time. So the decision to leave was brewing within me for a long, long time. So what it taught me is that in politics, things just happen. You cannot prepare or plan for everything. It also taught me that, and that wasn't a good lesson, but it is still a lesson, that in politics you also need, and that's maybe in life itself as well, you need to sort of be careful about what and who you trust. And that is always a lesson to learn. It also taught me that when I feel that I've lost a little bit of the, as I mentioned earlier, the big picture, I am not the leader I want to be. So when I don't wake up every morning and feel the drive or sort of assurance of why I'm there, what needs to be done, and how can I be a part of it, when I'm more worried about something else, it just doesn't sit with me well. Sort of, it made me uncomfortable. So I desperately need the sort of grand picture and the goal and the why to thrive. But it also taught me that you can leave something that you love, but you can do it in a different way. I mean, I always thought that I would be a politician forever. I thought it would be my life. And I thought that only that would fulfill me, if you like. But I learned that that is not the case. I'm more driven by passion around issues, and I can fulfill that elsewhere. So, but it's a harsh lesson, but it is what it is. You just sort of have to try and take the strength from it and not sort of go underground, if you like, because it's a bad experience.
Thanks for sharing. I'm thinking about what you say around you can leave. Yeah, because oftentimes a lot of people are stuck in a situation that is not ideal for them or work they don't love. I know, of course, there's a privilege to being able to leave, but I think that for those who are stuck in, oh, but I can't, I think there's something as well to get from that, is that the world does not end. You can leave, you can reinvent, which you absolutely did. I think the world, we're all better because in some sense, you've also reinvented and created these spaces that are so meaningful for women globally. I'm curious though, of course, in hindsight, it's easy to look at things and go, okay, yeah, that was a good decision. I wasn't feeling my why, so I left. But, the days after that decision, where the title is gone, what kept you propelled? What helped you move forward?
Yeah. I mean, as I said earlier, it took me months to sort of, I think I took the decision in my mind and in my heart months before I told it to others. I sort of felt that the drive wasn't there. And also it was not just about, I didn't find my why. It was also, I felt that in this defense mode that the situation created for me, and this happens to politicians, and I should have known all the time. But I wasn't prepared for it, and I took it way more personally than, for example, I mean, I worked really with others, and especially male politicians, and they would say she took it way too personally. She should have taken it politically, but not personally. And I think that is something within women, that we tend to take it a bit more personally, and we tend to, it wasn't just about my why, but I felt that I was to be serving the people of Iceland. I was to be serving the issues that I was elected to serve. If I'm not at my best, I'm not doing the best service. So I also felt, and that is what bothered me more than my own calling. I wasn't able to say, I'm am the best person to be leading on this important issue right now. So I felt that my duty was to create space for then others to do it. And I also took the decision, and I didn't, because you say, how did it feel to sort of the day after? I felt sad. I felt bad. In many ways, I felt awful, but I didn't miss my title. I was almost relieved. And I continued in politics as an MP for my term. I finished the term, but I had long decided that I would leave politics. I decided not just to leave an office within myself. I didn't tell that publicly. I had decided to leave politics. So I had time to adjust. I just decided, because I took this turbulence so personally, and it was so sort of difficult for me in so many ways, and for my family, I just decided it's not what I want to do for life. I want to do something else. So I never felt I know loads of politicians that leave and they are like, oh my God, nobody is calling me. I'm not important anymore. Where are all the meetings and where are all the places where I should be and is needed? I didn't feel that. No.
I love that. I'm hearing you had clarity. Like, even though it was sad, you were clear on what you wanted, what you did not want, and you acted on that.
Yes.
I'm thinking about recently, a friend of mine, she left a job, a leadership position, because she felt that the workplace was kind of toxic. And in the time that she was job hunting, she started feeling, oh my God, did I make a terrible decision? I don't have a job. It's not easy to get a job. And then she got invited back for like a proper goodbye or farewell or something. And when she got in there, all the anxiety she was feeling when she was there that actually helped her make that decision in the first place came back. And then she was reminded, So I think what I'm also hearing is your case is different, but it's the importance of clarity, like to know why this is the decision that is best for me. And something else that you say that I find quite interesting, because I work with a lot of leaders, I work in a lot of workplaces, and sometimes leaders don't have that identity clarity to understand when they are not the best person for that job. And it's an integrity problem, because then you're more focused on the title and the role, and then you're a bottleneck, whereas you're not serving the people as best as you can. So I think that's also something quite important that I'm getting from what you're saying is, I think it takes a lot. I don't think it happens often, to be honest, where leaders willingly go, I'm not doing the job. I'm not doing my duty, so I'm going to step away. So I think that's quite brilliant.
I totally agree with you. I think that we shouldn't, and in retrospect, I would not have wanted to spend my whole career as a politician in Iceland. So when I came back to my roots, if you like, for example, my younger daughter reminded me once when I was like, I missed Icelandic politics. What should I do? Where should I aim for? And she said to me, and this is where I had been sort of invited to consider a role for the UN. And I was like, I don't really know if I want to leave Iceland. I've been here for such a long time and the politics is my home and place and so on. And she was like, Mother, once I asked you what would be sort of your ideal job if you could do anything you wanted in the world. And at that point, I said to her, I would want to work for the UN in New York City. So she was like, do you really need to wonder about it? Which was, of course, absolutely correct. So I agree with you. I think leaders should more often leave and not necessarily stay for too long. I think it's good for democracy. I think it's good for everybody. But I would still I really want young women, if I want them to learn something from my story, is also, please don't leave because there are other requirements made towards women, or that you're being criticized harsher than them, or leave if you feel confident about it. Sort of the pressure of politics is always difficult, and you can seek support, you can seek advice, you can allow for the public to hear when you're vulnerable or you feel that you're not doing your best. Share that. Don't leave sort of instantly, because women leave way more often politics than men do.
I'm hearing be human. Allow yourself to be human. Yeah. I love that. Question for you. So now you're a tenured leader. You have experience. You've been doing this for so many years. Do you still have moments of doubt? Do you still have moments where because you still have a very public facing role, Do you still have moments where you catch yourself trying to manage perceptions? And if you do, how do you shift back?
Yeah, I have those moments, definitely. I mean, my role is, although I lead the initiatives, I lead my work, I have a great team, so I still define myself in a leadership role, but way different than when I was in national politics. The difference is that I go to shops in Reykjavík and people aren't saying, oh, I really dislike what you did yesterday, or I really think that you should reconsider what you decided, something like that, or criticizing the way I look or what I do. That's off, because the thing I lead now is sort of on a wider scale and not as personal to maybe the public of Iceland. So I feel that I don't need to explain everything that I do. And also what I really like about taking on a different kind of leadership role when I'm at that age is that I love working with people of different generation than myself. Within politics, we were all of a similar age, even older, so it was different. I really, and I try to make sure that my team is sort of more diverse and I sort of more of the younger ones. I find that to be empowering for myself. But I have endless moment of what am I doing? Should I do it this way or the other way? But then again, I found my calling. I mean, I'm back to where I started, really. I mean, my engine is gender equality, women's leadership. That's just my engine. And I feel that I'm back to that. So it's not as often that I sort of say I shouldn't be here, but it happens.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And thanks for sharing honestly as well, because I think for a lot of people, sometimes myself included, we forget that nothing is a linear path. Like it's not just a straight line. Sometimes it's like, a lot of zigzags in between. But of course, with experience, with time, with clarity, those zigzags become less and less and you can snap out of them quicker.
Yeah.
And you talk about coming back to your core, you've always been energized by creating spaces for women, for gender equality. And I guess I want to ask you around, how does your identity as a woman impact your leadership clarity?
I think for me, the whole time in my leadership journey, the fact me being a woman has always been the largest part of my leadership. I know that men might find this strange, but the perception and the profile of women in leadership is always different from men, and we have to fight for the right to be there and people for sort of to understand it. I mean, the research show that 85% of people, when they close their eyes and somebody say, think of a leader, they will think of a middle-aged white man. That's what they do. And he's in suit and he has deep voice and they're all the same.
Yep.
So when you are a leader and you even just look differently and you're of another sort of, you're not the usual picture of a leader, that part of your leadership becomes a large part. Also the fact that I believe that the world will be so much a better place if women are more seen and more visible in these roles. I have felt that I have needed to use my sort of what I've done to do more. I think that, for example, if I would have been a man and I would have resigned from politics, I would have done what my parents thought I would do in the beginning, went into a library, written books, and sort of shied away from the whole thing. But I felt that because there are not many women that have done and have the experience of leadership in different sectors, I felt that I had it was my duty to make sure I could use it and do something good with it. So I think that the gender part has always been and then of course, I'm an ambitious person. I really, really want to do things. I like to move and shake things. That's of course also, I like it. I find it to be empowering. I find it to be important. And I really think that I'm doing something of value. So, yeah.
And you are doing something of value. So thank you for doing it. I love it when you say, you like to move and shake things. And I also think that clarity is so important. Sometimes I meet a lot of my friends or women in my generation. You give them a compliment about something they're good at. And you're like, no. It's like, you are good at it. Own it. Claim it. You know, I think that is so important. It's not to perform. I think it's important to be humble, but it's also important to know who you are and what you bring to the table. Because then that clarity guides you in how you make decisions, in how you lead. And for you, you have, I mean, you're talking to you, and also before this conversation, you know, you always came off to me as somebody who has very strong identity clarity. So now with that clarity, I want to ask you, what is a value or some values that you will not trade no matter what? Like earlier you talked about, you know, sometimes in politics, you have to go the route of your party, even if you disagree. Now, with your many years, decades of experience as a leader, now in your own grounding, what will you not trade no matter what?
Respect.
What does that mean?
It means that when you are doing things around leadership and you're trying to lead a way, you're trying to change things, and you're trying to do something that is for the greater good. This is how I would define the importance of leadership. This can be within a company, this can be within a grassroots organization, this can be in politics, this can be on the international stage. If you do not have respect for our common ground, sort of everybody has the same right. Everybody's views should be respected. If you don't have respect for that, and you honestly feel that somebody isn't sort of good enough or doesn't have the background to contribute or something like that, because that often within power, there is this isolation of the ones that think they know. So my opinion is that if you do not respect that we all know and that we all can contribute, then you're totally lost. So I think for me, and I've always tried to sort of, whether I have been trying to build a consensus within a political party, within the City Council of Reykjavík, within government, I always tried to make sure that I had respect. Because if you don't have respect, then you're not talking to people sort of finding the common ground. So I think that when I enter some kind of gray areas where people are like, I mean, we should just stick to our way of thinking here. I always say, let's regroup a little bit. I think the respect part of it, and not sort of belittling people or their views or where they come from or something like that. I mean, we can call it things, but I think the value of being open-minded to all kinds of things is super, super important.
I love that. And I think I'm also hearing as a leader the importance of curiosity and understanding that you can learn from everyone, even though you disagree. I mean, people bring different lived experience to any situation.
Yeah.
But that ability, for me, when I look at the world, when I look at politics, like it's not, people, no, there's a lot of disrespect in that regard that is happening in the world where I know best, I'm the best, I'm the God. So I think that's actually, and I'm glad I asked like what respect means, because I think for a lot of us, respect can mean different things.
Yes.
But to ground it within every voice matter, everyone at least deserves to be heard. No matter if you disagree, it doesn't reduce their validity as a person or as a contributor.
Exactly. And also, Chisholm, this goes back to, I mean, the reason why I founded the Reykjavík Global Forum is on this, that we respect different views, that we take them on. So it's all sort of knitted within the same thing. I mean, we can say that we would like to listen to the view of somebody, but then we don't call them to the table. So I think this conversation of different groups bearing respect for each other and being willing, this curiosity, for example, I think that if we were to do that, for example, on the global stage today, things would be a little bit different, easier and better, frankly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that also is, I don't know, I mean, one of the magic behind the Reykjavík Global Forum, because one could reverse the respect and say, when leaders say, I think respect is important, then somebody could say, okay, so you're saying that we should respect power. No, I'm not saying that we should respect power necessarily. For example, in Reykjavík, Iceland, we are all called by our first name. It doesn't matter what position you have. It doesn't matter what title you have. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you're used to be hearing. Some of these women are used to being addressed like the honorable. We don't do that in Iceland. We are all called by first name. I mean, I was never called the minister. I'm Hanna.
Yeah.
I didn't want people within my team to call me the mayor. I'm not. My name isn't mayor. My name is Hanna. So this is another way of saying we want the respect to be sort of different, more to the human and what they bring, less to titles and what they have earned. So I find that to be something that I'm not willing to compromise on.
I love that. And one of the things that's coming up for me is leadership is also not the title. There are a lot of leaders who have the title, but and I wouldn't respect them if you paid me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's also the person. Like it's or I would not respect, I wouldn't follow them. I wouldn't follow their direction. I think that there's also something brilliant in that. It's not about the title. It's about, can I show up and earn this role every single day? Can I earn your trust? Can you challenge me? Can I hear you? Can I challenge you back? So I really, really love that. And on respect, I also wanted to perhaps maybe also pose a little bit challenging question around. I understand the value of respect, but in terms of everyone has a voice. But what if that voice is hateful? What if that voice is destructive? What happens? How do you put a pin on it?
That is a challenging one, but I would say, for example, talking about the respect, for example, the work I do for UN Women, we have created a network of leaders. We call it UN Women Leaders Network. The women there is half and half young leaders that would not be defined within a traditional definition of a leader, necessarily as a leader, because they haven't held the formal title of a leader, but they are leaders within their community, within their spaces. So I think most importantly, as you're saying, we need to redefine the concept of a leader. A young girl that changes her community is just as important as some of the traditional ones, as I said earlier, that are all defined as middle-aged white men. We need to shift the way we see leaders. But when you're talking about the ones that are, you said, hateful or something like that, this is where I would say, for example, within the Reykjavík Global Forum, we are not a platform that platforms such views. We, if we say respect is the core, we expect you to respect. If you are just in the conversation to diminish somebody or sort of belittle somebody, then that isn't respect. So, when I say that, I'm talking about disrespectful things. I'm not talking about different views.
Yeah.
People can have all kinds of view, and we should respect that. But when people become hateful or disrespectful, I would choose not to platform those voices. So, and I would say that I'm doing that because I respect the audience, I respect my community, and we are not gathered to sort of listen to things like that. Sorry. Then people can find other platforms for that.
Yeah. I love it. Clear boundaries,
Yeah.
And so I think that's great. And I think it's also quite necessary because, of course, I write a lot. I publish articles and I also just post a lot sometimes. And rather than some people to engage when they feel challenged, it's so easy to reach for the hateful words, you know, to become sexist, to become misogynistic, right? So that was what I was curious about, is there's a line in terms of, and it's really great to see there's that clear boundaries in this community, in the spaces I create, we have clarity on what is acceptable and what is a no-no.
That is so important, especially if you're creating spaces for women. Research shows that women in politics, for example, they are 2 or 3 times as likely to be harassed or assaulted within, whether it be sort of a public place or our virtual spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we need to make sure that women feel safe and secure in the spaces we create for them. And part of them is to make sure that it isn't disrespectful or hateful.
I love that. Because and I think there's a cost with being visible, like in your work as a woman. And sometimes when I'm visible, so I get good things, but I also get a lot of hate. And sometimes I think, would you say that to a man?
Exactly.
Would you dare? Yeah. So I think, of course, I think this is also why the space you create is so valuable. One of the things that keeps coming up for me, and the people I know who've also been there, is people come in and they can just exhale. They don't have to be anybody else but themselves. Yeah, like it's no performance. I'm just showing up as I am. And I love that. And I think that's something very beautiful that you've created. You meet a lot of women. You talk to a lot of women leaders. You know them personally. What do you think women leaders specifically struggle with when it comes to clarity in their identity of the type of leader they are, for example?
I think the general rule is the same as we talked about in the beginning, because Iceland is, we are super privileged here. So women leaders here are way more confident and they feel at ease, they feel at home, they feel safe. It's a totally different thing. But in my work, I would say that if you look at the globe, I mean, we are still faced with the fact that only 25% of MPs are women. We are still faced with only 8% of the CEO of the largest company being women. When it comes to ministers, only 18% of them are women. When it comes to heads of states, 7%, 7 to 10%. So I think we are still sadly in the situation where women feel that they are not sort of part of the traditional power structure, if you like, and they constantly need to prove that they should be and are. So I think this is still the main challenges, the fact that they are a little bit alone in this space and place of power and leadership, and they still need to carve a new route. And that takes effort, that takes patience, a lot of courage. And it might be something that you think, I don't want to do this my whole life. Honestly, I'm constantly sort of shoveling. I'm constantly trying to make changes. I'm constantly trying to push this large thing into a different direction. But it really, I'm only alone in this, maybe with several other women, but the bulk of them are not wanting to go. So I think that is still sadly the main challenge.
I have two questions for you before we go into the speed round. The first one is, maybe I should preface this with, over the weekend, I was talking to my friend, she's an author, and she's written this leadership book. And I was like, let me look up the top leadership books in the world. I think Brené Brown was the only woman in a lot of the lists I got that were all men and mostly all white men. And I'm thinking, oof, maybe that's why the world is where it's at currently, right? Like we need a lot of women also valued for what we bring, in that sense to the table. And then I wanted to ask you about imposter syndrome, because I meet so many women who talk about having imposter syndrome. I don't think I have ever met a single man, even the most average man, that says to me, Chisom, yeah, I know what imposter syndrome is. So what is your view on that? And how can women elevate themselves from that thinking?
Yeah, I think that this comes from the same ground as we've been talking about, that women don't see this. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So it's always something that they're finding themselves. I've phrased it sometimes as we are guests in the world of power, if you like. They own it. They've created it. And once there was this guy that was criticizing something that I said in politics, and he said, I cannot understand why Hanna is talking about this. I cannot understand why she's saying that women aren't influential enough. I mean, Hanna has always been, he was describing it as a plane. And he was saying, Hanna Birna has always been seated more or less on business class or first class because she's had big roles and she's been seated there. And I said to him, I don't want to be seated in the first class or in the business class. I want to fly the plane.
Yes.
I want to fly the plane.
I love that.
I want to decide where we're going, the speed we're going. I want to fly the plane. And this is what I think is sometimes with women, that they don't own the will to lead. I mean, sometimes women are even shy to say, I want power. I want power. It's not a bad or an ugly thing. I want power, but I want to execute it in as beautiful way as I can. But I need power to do it. So I think that we should sometimes sort of just say it to make sure that, for example, young women see it, that they shouldn't just be seated in, I mean, I can sit in a first class or whatever and sip a champagne. I don't want that. I want to make the changes. I don't want to sort of just roll back and enjoy the ride. So I think the imposter syndrome, yes, I agree with you. That is so heavily weighted for so many women. I think we can change it by supporting them, constantly telling them what a great job they're doing and how important it is, and make sure that our young women see us, the younger ones, saying, you need power. It's not ridiculous to want it, and go for it.
I really, really love this. Oh, that makes me so happy. A couple of weeks ago, somebody wrote me and she said, what is your 5 or 10-year goals? And I hate that question. I know people like it. I know it's a thing. And I responded to her and I said, I really don't like that question because I don't want to have to answer. So you have a gauge of what my ambitions are. But what I can tell you is I want to be powerful. Yeah. I want power in all the ways. In my personal life, in my professional life, in my social life. I want to have power, and I am so proud of being able to articulate that for myself, because without power, I'm left to somebody else's decision. I can't decide for myself what to do, where to go, what to shake, what to move. And there's something so disempowering and paralyzing about that. So for me, it was, and I've been saying this a lot recently, I want power. I'm going to own it. I don't care how anyone receives it. I want all the power. So it just made me feel really good to hear you talk about, like, just say it.
Yeah.
And go for it. I love it.
Yeah. And also, Chisholm, what you were saying, because you were saying that, and that is the fact. I mean, and this is why I think it's so important to talk about women as leaders, not just say we're gathering women, but we're gathering women leaders. I mean, they are leaders, and we are giving them that name, and we are defining it in a different way from what it has usually been done. But I think because you talked about history and the stories of men, I went to a bookshop in UK the other day in London, and I was trying to find some biographies of women. I mean, they were all the usual ones, but 90% were men. And I think we need, and this is what you are, for example, doing with podcast, is to tell the stories of women to make sure that they are part of history. Yes. It seems to be that we constantly write history via men, but we don't write it via women. No. So that also is something that we have to be mindful of. And when I talk to, for example, great women that have done great things, and I say, aren't you going to write your story or have somebody writing your story? No, Hanna, why should I? Because it's important, because it's been of value. If you say this to a man, especially men that have been in politics and have big egos, you say you should write your biography, they are like totally on it the day after. And they are like, of course. I mean, my story cannot be sort of forgotten about. It needs to be, so we also need to find the ways of making sure that it's communicated.
Hanna, who's writing your story?
The traditional women answer is just, it doesn't need to be told.
No, it absolutely needs to be told. Is there a book?
No.
Not yet? Would there be a book?
No. I mean, I think that the only thing that I would like to do in that respect, and I actually started that at one point in my career, was to write sort of concepts of what I think that I would like to communicate to younger women. Right? Sort of not my story, but more sort of what I think is sort of what is aligned by every woman, what we all live, if you like.
Like a manifesto for women. I love it. So I know I'm putting a little bit of pressure, but will you do it? Have you done it? Or have you finished it?
No. I started at one point, but then I thought it would be more interesting to have like sort of, I would rather write, this is a typical female answer as well. I would rather write sort of a book where you flag different kinds of leaders.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. But that's also important as well.
Yes,
and I think when it's written from a woman's voice.
Exactly.
I read so many books on leadership, and I'm ashamed to say they're mostly men.
Yeah.
you know, so I think, and it's not because I don't look for ones written by women. It's just that they're few and far in between, or they don't get published with the same tenacity or whatever it is. So I think, Okay. This has been great. Now I have like speed questions. And first I want to look into, what are you aspiring to right now in your personal life and in your professional life?
Work less.
Work less. Okay. I love that. Is that like for the two, in your personal and professional conjoined?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self? Like if you could speak to younger Hanna, it could be, say, when you were elected as mayor. It could be when you were younger, before you even thought you would go into politics. What would you tell her?
I want to use, now I would like to use some rough phrases, but I'm not going to do that. That's not polite. That's not what women in their almost 60 do.
I like rough phrases.
But I would tell her not to care so much about what they say, honestly. Just sort of go your way. And I know for young women, it's like, oh, they always say this, but it's because it's the truth. Sometimes you simply just don't need to give a damn, honestly.
I love it.
Yeah, and just sort of shake the boat and don't constantly be polite, and within the frame, just sort of,
I love that.
Sometimes you just shouldn't give a damn.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also hearing other people's opinion of you is none of your business.
No.
Yeah? Especially when you know you're doing right by yourself, by your values. It's like, it is none of your business, because when you start thinking about it, you start to people please.
Yeah.
And you start to lose yourself in the process. Yeah. Love that. Okay. My next question for you is, what do you wish you knew about who you were as a leader when you were younger?
I wish I knew that I had a quality that is of value in leadership, and that is the quality to get different people to have a conversation and reach a conclusion. I wish I would have known that.
I love that. I love that. Okay. What is one piece of leadership wisdom that you hold on to? Something that continues. I know you talked about respect earlier on, but in terms of just a philosophy of yours that continues to be your anchor, is there another one?
So many, if you like. I think there is one thing. I think that you should redefine in your mind the way we have always been taught that leaders should be, and they need to be driven by something. They need to be driven by the fact that they really like to be around large group of people, or they really like the prestigious part of. People say often when you're thinking, for example, women are being asked why they want to enter politics. They say, I don't feel the drive that I'm being told I need to find. Do you know what I mean? It seems to be that women have a different kind of drive. And I would say, for example, I know it's really strange to say for a person that been in politics for a long time, but I'm more of a loner than a people's person. I thought that would be, I really hesitated to ever say that, because I thought it would be, she cannot be a leader. There are different sort of qualities that are of benefit. You can care for people, you can care for your society, you can care for the greater good, but you can do it in your way. It doesn't mean that you always want to be the star of the show or the loudest. It doesn't have to mean that. So I think that is of value, and something we have been told isn't of value for leaders.
Yeah, I really love that. I think as well, what is coming up for me is the importance of, because I think, as you said earlier, oftentimes for people who have a public facing role, who speak on stages, there's this idea that you must have been born like that. You must be an extrovert, and just hearing you also is helping me reflect about myself, where, I get drained by people. There are people who get energy from people. Like when I run my conference, I need to recover for 2 weeks, and that I need some distance. Yeah. And that doesn't mean I don't care for people.
Exactly.
It's just, I'm built differently in that sense. I value that time, but it takes a lot out of me. So I think for people who are listening to this, we're living proof that you can be quiet, you can be like an ambivert or an introvert, or like your own space, and still lead and still speak up. Yeah.
And you can also, this thing, as you were saying about being involved in something that, of course, demands that you are amongst very many people, you can also train for that. You can also, it might not be in your DNA, but you can train for it, and you can do it well. But you might need to sort of withdraw from time to time, but that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What is a book that has fundamentally inspired you or changed the way you think?
It's an Icelandic book. It's called Independent People. It's from our Nobel Peace Prize author here in Iceland, Halldór Kiljan Laxness. That book did something for me in sort of ways I cannot explain. Just the language he uses, the way he defines people that want to be independent and be respected and want to sort of be able to be their own person and be the designers of their own faith, if you like. So I read it when I was like 17, and it had a huge impact on me.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. I made a note. Independent People. I'll look that up in order. Yeah. We've talked a lot today about identity clarity. So basically knowing who you are as a leader. For somebody who's listening to this, who's struggling with their identity right now, that clarity of who they are, maybe it's their first leadership role, maybe they are navigating transition, what's one thing you want them to know or do?
This is also a really hard one, because I think it's undervalued, the importance of leaders changing. Do you know what I mean? I feel that what might have driven me 30 years ago don't drive me today. And I even think that I'm a different leader in different communities or different spaces or places. Still, there is a thing, and this is why it's so important, and this is what I regret regarding my leadership journey, is to constantly be running. And this is why I say work less. I think the constant run is not the best thing for leaders. I think leaders need to pause. And again, what I said earlier about the grand big picture, in order to see that, you need to pause. You need to give yourself the brain space and the emotional space. It's also just important for your mental health. You just need to keep the strength, do something that really nourishes you, and don't see it as, I don't have time to go to yoga, I don't have time to climb some mountains, I don't have time to do this because it takes from my work. It actually doesn't take from your work. It actually makes sure that you stay tuned to what drives you. So I would say to leaders, if you're not sort of exactly sure or you're finding it challenging at times, close the computer, do something that really feeds you, because then you can find it again and again and again. I think that I regret the most that for several times in my leadership journey, I lost it because I ran so fast.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, because I think what you say about like, don't always be running, it's a perfect, like sentence. So I think, thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
This will be not nice. At some point when I was starting my political journey, I really found it valuable to be loud and to be a little bit aggressive. And I even I look at, for example, interviews that I did when I was younger, and I look at this young woman and I'm like, ooh, she's really, she's putting her point across firmly but aggressively. And I thought that was something you did in politics, and I valued it as somebody strong. But today, I would say that is not necessarily a thing that defines you as strong. So I think that is something I saw a value in. I was not sort of saying that's the best thing, but I saw the value in it. But I see the value now in putting your point across in a little bit of a different manner than I used to do when I was beginning as a leader.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a very valuable advice, because I think a lot of people, and especially emerging leaders, the standard of leadership is always like in your face, aggressive, the loudest one in the room. And I think that is a reminder that we don't have to be the loudest in the room. We don't have to be aggressive. So thank you for that. Because I think for me, it's also, again, this is also kind of what I feel when I talk to women, is it gets to the heart of, how you lead. You can lead at yourself and still be effective. You don't have to perform a different version of what a leader is. So yeah, with that, I want to say thank you for this conversation. I think this was a really great conversation. It was very honest, very nourishing. I look forward to listening to it just as a fan. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Tisha. Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this. Thanks for making sure that women are heard. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's this week's Overnight Wisdom. If this conversation hit home, you're not alone. Thousands of emerging leaders, and people are doing the same work, figuring out who they actually are instead of who they think they should be. Subscribe for new episodes every Wednesday and join the conversation. What's one thing from today you're taking with you? Thanks for listening. I'm Chisomu Deze.